Football sometimes can be a very cruel sport. You can prepare for a game as tactically as you want, but sometimes the little things, the fine margins will flip the script. Now, in this Man City Arsenal game, I think that the game was determined by the fine margins. One little nudge flipped the entire script. Look at the momentum graph in this game. Arsenal seem to have started as the better team, but at some point, just around the 16-minute mark, something changed. The momentum went away, and then City had the upper hand. What actually happened? Now, I'm not claiming to be in Arteta or Guardiola's mind. I don't know what they were thinking, but from my armchair, sitting in my armchair in my living room and watching the game, I can guess what happened. Let me explain it to you this way. First, let me show you what was going on in the game leading up to that time, and then we can sort of guess what happened. Now, let me begin by showing you Arsenal's setup off the ball. This is the early minutes of the game. Now, Arsenal, we've known them to do this usual 4-2-4 pressing, usually. In this game, they just about did the same thing. Now, the entire goal of this pressing was to make sure that they cut off every central progression for Manchester City. There was no route through the center. Both Rodri and Bernardo Silva can only get on the ball if they choose to get into that Man City's defensive line. Now, what this then does is that the only outlet for City on this occasion is to try to take the ball out wide. Now, with the compactness of Arsenal, even when they go out wide, Arsenal could easily shift bodies across to make sure that that part of the pitch is compressed. There's no progression from Manchester City. And then even if they eventually decide to take the ball to the other direction as well, the same thing happens. It's that 4-2-4 press, making sure that the two central pivots are taken out of the game, which on this occasion is Rodri and Bernardo Silva. They are quite marked in the center. And then these four Arsenal players, they are not pressing. They're not pushing up to try to win the ball. They are just there, just watching to make sure that none of these four players can progress the ball. And even if it goes out wide, there is Trossard on one side or Saka on the other side to immediately go after the wide man. Interestingly enough, Manchester City and Guardiola adopted the very same strategy as well. In the initial build-up, I don't know if you noticed one point in this game where Kepa had the ball for like 30 seconds, was just there trying to bait the press, but nobody was moving to him. He was just holding the ball. There was a standoff. This is what was happening. City were doing the exact same thing. It's making sure that they take out the double pivot for Arsenal, with Zubimendi and Rice, taken out of the game. You can't progress the ball to them. Both Silva, Haaland, and I think Doku here are keeping an eye on Arsenal centre backs and also their full backs. They're not going out to press them. They're just making sure that the ball doesn't get through. And then keeping the players behind them in their cover shadow. So you are defending the player in front of you. You are keeping the player behind you in your cover shadow. There was no movement at all. The center of the pitch was blocked. Now, at the end of the day, what was happening for both teams is that they had to go very direct, try to find passes high up the pitch. It was what Arsenal were trying to do, trying to find Gyökeres in the channels to run at City's centre backs. And then Manchester City, on the other hand, adopted a rather similar strategy. City's strategy was more direct. Now, I think we now got to a point where we had tactical equilibrium. Both teams would have cancelled each other out at that point. I think the game from that point onwards now became about the individual battles. There was this interesting battle between Semenyo and Hikampie down this side. I think that was the major outlet for Man City in this game when they went out wide. And then you also had Sheki coming up here to create an overload as well. And then Trossard would join. So you had this Trossard, Sheki, Hikampie, Semenyo combination down that Arsenal's right-hand side. And then you had Doku on Ben White. I think Ben White was doing an excellent job on Doku on that side. And then when Arsenal went long, you had Gyökeres on Ake. Gyökeres ran this channel a lot in this game. And I think for some time, Ake struggled with the pace of Gyökeres down that side. There were a few occasions that I thought Kusanov had to rescue Ake out of trouble, but I didn't include that because I didn't think it had any big impact on the game. But where I thought the real impact was and what changed the game completely, though, was this. This battle that was going on between Semenyo, Hikampie, Trossard, and Sheki there was City's main outlet in this game. And I think for the first few minutes of the game, Hikampie and Trossard were dealing with that threat very well. But at around that 16-minute mark, when Hikampie got a yellow card, and mind you, prior to that yellow card, there were times whenever Semenyo was able to get Hikampie 1v1, he was doing damage already. Let me show you an example. There were a few moments in the game like this when Semenyo got Hikampie in a 1v1. And I think that sometimes in this game, he's just able to actually beat Hikampie and get the ball into the box. Let me show you another example of what I'm talking about. Again, is this 2-on-2 combination. But once they are able to isolate Hikampie one-on-one with Semenyo was able to actually get around him and put crosses into the box. But again, it wasn't too bad because I think overall the situation was manageable. But once Hikampie got a yellow card, then there was a problem. Because with Sheki and Semenyo, you are dealing with two magicians, two people who are extremely good with the ball on their feet. They can dribble, they can take on opponents one-on-one. To be able to defend against players like that, you need to be able to go aggressively on them. You need to be able to leave something on them with every tackle. But once you're on the yellow card as a defender, it's like you are now playing with one hand tied behind your back. You have to watch every tackle, every step you make. And I think that about flipped the script for Arteta. Now, Arteta had two choices to make. One choice was to take Hikampie out of the game and bring Calafiori. And I believe he thought about that for a second because I just caught sight of this clip during the game where you can clearly see Calafiori in the sidelines at about the 29th minute, warming up on the sidelines. And I think at this point, it was my belief that Arteta flirted with the idea of taking Hikampie off and bringing Calafiori in because the battle was going on in that Arsenal's left-hand side. But he didn't. Another option would have been to then bring your defensive line backward. You play on the back foot now, compress your defense and make sure that you have bodies around Hikampie to support him. And that is what Arteta opted to do. That was why this momentum graph changed at this point, that Arsenal were now sort of playing on the back foot, took their foot off the pedal, and instead focused on keeping the game square. Again, I'm not in Arteta's head, but that's just my thoughts about the game. Now, you can argue that this was a bad decision. It should have taken Hikampie off and brought Calafiori on. There is no evidence. There is no way you can prove that even when Calafiori comes, Calafiori was going to do a better job than Hikampie. There is no evidence that the same thing would not have happened. But again, in my opinion, this was the small margin that entirely flipped the game. And from then on in, Arteta focused on keeping that game as 0-0 as long as he can. It was the same tactics that Rosinho employed when they played Arsenal. Remember, I told everybody that time that it is very valid tactics. Keep the game level for as long as you can. And then in the final moment, anything can happen. Put your best foot out. But unfortunately, Kepa did not allow Arsenal to even get to that point. But then again, is what it is. But I think overall, it was a good game. Maximum respect to Arteta, maximum respect to Guardiola. It's football. It happened.